So today was an unexpectedly long day. I got really sick on New Year's Day, and it's now middle of January, and I'm still, as you can tell, congested. I am getting better, but there's been about 2 weeks where not a lot has gotten done. Just I haven't had the strength for it. I've been trying to get well and not pushing myself so far or too far. But today, there's a couple things I needed to do. I've left the house maybe 2 or 3 times the last couple of weeks to get some things done that needed to get done. So today I had to go down to the bottom of the mountain to another county to get a couple of tasks done. So everything was good. I got in my car and started driving. Then disaster struck. I was already off the mountain and in sort of a flat country road area. It's not a highway, but it's a very heavily traversed road. But there's like no phone reception there, and a lot of it's a country road. It's a country road to get you from one place to another. So suddenly my car starts screaming at me, red lights, no fluids, idle your engine, stop driving. And the road is kind of like this, and there's no shoulder. So I had to fortunately it was down, so I just kind of went down until I found a small little road off the main road that I could pull into, and stopped the car. And I didn't know what was going on because truthfully, I take really good care of my car. I take it to the dealership all the time. I don't fool around with my car. My car is very important to me. So I wasn't sure what the heck was happening. Of course, there was no reception there. And I usually have this little Garmin thing that I carry with me, but it was in another purse, and I'd taken a different purse, and I also didn't have my insurance with me. And there was just like a bunch of kind of a mess. And I always like to pride myself on being prepared, but there's some fine tuning obviously that needs to be done after what happened today. So anyway, I couldn't call out. I have road service, and I couldn't call out. So I just stood there on the road and outside the car and just hung out there. And somebody finally pulled up, this really sweet young man, and he did have phone service, and I was able to call somebody who was able to call AAA for me, and AAA came. This was more annoyance than it was actual being afraid, because I had the infrastructure to support this situation. I have roadside service, I have insurance, I'm sort of in an area that I'm familiar with, and I know people, and I could get help. I knew that once I got to the dealership I could get help. So it was more of a, I don't know. I was also kind of annoyed because I had all these plans to get things done. And I was a little bit nervous because I wasn't sure what was going on with my car, why it did this. I just didn't understand any of it. But the tow truck driver came, and he was adorable, and we took the car down to the dealership, dropped the car off. They were going to look at it. As it turns out, I now know everything. Just one little piece came off, and it created all this havoc, but nothing. I don't think there's anything majorly wrong with the car, thank goodness. It is also under warranty. I bought that extended warranty that you're not supposed to ever buy, but I've already used it twice. And it also pays for the rental car. So anyway, that's kind of I'm setting the stage here. So I was in town, and I know, I'd lived in that town for 30 years, so I pretty much knew where to go and how to go and what to do. But I had one thing I needed to do at the bank, so I could get a ride to the bank at that moment. I checked my car in, so I couldn't get a ride to the bank. So I had to call Uber. Their shuttle service at the dealership, they were at lunch, and the person I was trying to call to give me a ride wasn't available answering the phone. So I thought, I'm just going to grab Uber and go to the bank and at least get that done. Well, the driver and I started chatting. I love riding Uber because you meet the nicest, most interesting drivers. And he was telling me about a call he had had, I guess the week before. This area of Sonoma County where I was at has a lot of, Sonoma County is fairly rural. It's a wine growing region, and it was always an agricultural area. So he ended up going into this area to pick somebody up, and he said the car had indicated to him, or whatever, the Uber whatever the Uber has, it indicated there's no street lights. So he said he got a little afraid, and he drove into this like parking lot, and he ended up not being able to find the client. And it ended up being kind of it all resolved at the end, but he couldn't find the client, and he talked to me about how scared he was to be in that dark area with no lights and in this rural area, and he was just very nervous about it. Then he said he had been a police officer for 30 years in the city. And, he said, I've been the police officer, and in the city, when you enter a dark situation, it's a scary situation. So he said, naturally went into this dark situation. It was scary. And I said, I live up in this rural community, and it's always dark up there. So I said, it was a different sort of fear that you'd never been afraid of before. We started talking about that, and I said, I was always afraid of the dark until I lived in a place that was very dark with no street lights anywhere, and it's very dark. I've talked about that. You open the door, pitch black. So we ended up having a very interesting conversation about that, and I was kind of sorry when we got to the bank, but just about the, fear and, you think you've been afraid of everything, then there's some new thing that happens, and it's like, oh my God, I'm feeling this feeling of fear again. So of course I started looking at the bigger picture, and I think we all look at the bigger picture, from time to time, and I started thinking to myself, well, what happened today on the road with the car going out, I was not afraid. I would have been afraid years before because I might not have had the infrastructure to handle this. I might not have had the experience to handle it. This would have been the worst thing that ever happened to me, and I would have definitely had fear. But as my life has progressed, I have faced many things which have brought me fear. And sometimes I was thinking, this evening, if someone had told me, 20 years ago or 30 years ago or 10 years ago, 5 years ago, the things I would have faced in my life, I would have said, forget it. I can't do this. I know I cannot do this. I'm absolutely certain that everyone who is listening to me right now has had the exact same experience. If you look back on your life and you think about all the things you thought you could never do, and all the things that scared you, and all the things that have happened that have just brought up that fear response, and if you'd known, you would have never left your bed. I know I wouldn't have. I would have thought, what sort of life am I leading here? Totally normal one. And interestingly enough, the more fearful things that I have faced, the more scary, unknown things I've had to face, I think the more resilient I have become. I would not have, look back 15 years, 20 years, I would not be the person I am now if I had not faced all these challenges that I had to overcome. And it is interesting. I don't know if I would have asked for those challenges, and I think many of them I might have been able to do without, but here we are, like that Uber driver in a country road with no lights at 10 o'clock at night. He'd faced so many things in his life, but he'd never faced that. And now he's faced it, and he handled the situation, and next level. So I want to hear from you, because I'm still kind of thinking about this, and it's really on my mind. I mean, what do you feel that you have your fears? Do you feel that they've moved you forward in life, conquering them? Do you feel like if you had known what you'd have to face in your life when you were younger, that you would have been even more scared? Is it better to know what you're going to face? Is it better not to know what you're going to face and just face it as it comes? I don't know. So I'm interested in your thoughts on this. I mean, have you faced fears that you never thought you'd face? I know you have all faced experiences you've never thought you would face, because we do not have the imagination or the foresight or the ability to see the future to know what we're going to face. But I mean, what part does fear play in your life. I have found that for me, I've done a lot of things I wouldn't have had the courage to do many years ago. Even just living up here, I had no idea what I was getting into. Zero idea. And I've sort of learned by experience, and I've had some very frightening experiences trying to adapt to life up here and to all the things that have happened up here. And trust me, 99% of the things which have happened up here do not make it to YouTube. Only the happy things. But it certainly gives me pause for thought. And I'd like to hear your thoughts on it, really. The part that fear has played in your life. Has fear made you stronger? Has fear made you more afraid? Has fear made you kind of withdraw into your life and into yourself, which is perfectly understandable? Or has fear made you more open? I don't know. I'm still processing today. It was a very interesting, brief but interesting conversation. So let me know what you think. Thank you so much for listening to me.